Hello.
Hey, I'm JQ.
I'm TQ.
We're the Q Brothers.
And this is Small Flower TV. We're here today to talk about something that's a little bit controversial, and we don't have products lined up unlike normal. Part of the reason we're going to talk about this is that we get so many questions. The topic is fluoride. To use it, to not use it, is it dangerous, is it not dangerous? If you do a Google search, which we've done many of them, is it beneficial, is it not beneficial? We've done many of them over the years, and you will be bombarded with like battle cries from what are clearly two opposing industry groups and other individuals have aligned themselves on one side of this war or the other. I won't say that we're a neutral party because we certainly have our own feelings, but our goal was to kind of take away the incentive. We don't come from any group that has a huge incentive one way or the other. We sell products with fluoride, toothpaste, and we sell a lot of products without it. I have my personal opinions, which you'll kind of get to know as we talk about this, but we don't have any major axe to grind here. Our goal is really not to say we're going to tell you today what to do. Our goal is to say let's look at
ask these questions.
Yeah, let's look at the history of the use of fluoride and how it came about, and also questions that we have and we've asked ourselves, and sometimes, and I think come up with some own answers for our personal use. But maybe you want to ask yourself. So hopefully this will be done in a way that you'll find it useful and not feel like we're certain. Our goal certainly isn't to go around telling you what to use and what to do.
Right.
So Jay, let's talk about first about what is fluoride. The definition. Fluoride is it's
a mineral.
It's a mineral. It's fluorine, the element fluorine, which is a poisonous gas in nature, but it's bound with another element to form a more stable compound. And there's a number of those that it can be. We won't go into the chemical nature of everything, but fluoride is basically this compound, an elemental fluorine bound.
It has a strong affinity for calcium, so a lot of times you'll see it in the form of calcium fluoride. That's the most common.
That's what you see, I think, in toothpaste.
Yeah, I think so.
So, the issue is, what does it do, and how did it come about being used? So, give a little bit of the history about what they discovered.
So like in the late 19th century, so 1900s, basically they found these incidences of children with dental fluorosis, which is you called it mottled enamel.
It's mottled enamel. It's too much fluoride, and everyone agrees it's not a controversial point. Everyone knows this. Too much fluoride in the body
white spots, right?
Creates white mottled spots in the enamel, and also discoloration. So some spots get darker, some get lighter.
And real severe can be like dark brown, crazy.
Yeah, and it can be not attractive.
So they were looking at why this terrible looking thing was happening to these teeth, but then they accidentally
they discovered first of all these communities where they'd have these isolated incidents were usually high levels of fluoride in the water, in their water source.
So then what they found was that despite the not looking so good, they also had the lowest incidence of cavities among children.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
And so that's when they first got the idea. Then
that fluoride, the reason it's in your toothpaste is to prevent cavities,
right,
to prevent tooth decay.
That's right. And so then they did some studies that were
to a degree.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So there's
no question about that. Too much fluoride is bad, everyone agrees.
And fluoride is antibacterial.
And prevents tooth decay. Those things are pretty much unquestioned. Now the problem is, so how much do you take? When should you take it? Who should take it?
Are there other alternative antibacterials?
Yeah.
That are safer? Things like that.
So what happened was, but up until what was it? The 50s, or when was it? There was.
Yeah, it was basically in the I think it was 40s, 50s time. It was basically right around World War II. So what happened was, this is getting a little off topic, but what happened was basically they needed high amounts of fluoride for atomic bombs.
They needed fluoride, or was it a byproduct of that?
No, they used fluoride in the actual weapon. So what's interesting about that is that if they were to admit that there was some negative effects of fluoride, then they would also put the kibosh on the Manhattan Project. So there was a lot of incentive for the United States and for all their testing and the surrounding areas would open them to a lot of lawsuits because they were finding strange things with the livestock around.
But also the fluoride in the aluminum and heavy metal industry
and phosphate industry.
The phosphate industry, this fluoride compounds were one of the industrial waste byproducts.
That is the major waste. Next to industrial waste.
And so there's just an interesting history, and you can look it up. We won't get into it. But of how does an industrial waste byproduct, of which they have too much supply and no demand for it, or very little. The bomb industry is one of them, but there's still, what do we do with all this stuff? They would have to pay for cleanup or some disposal. There was a powerful aligning of industries to say, well, we know that fluoride has this cavity prevention benefit. What if we start fluoridating certain water sources as well as adding it to toothpaste? And let's talk to dentists and start recommending that fluoride become a regular part of your dental routine. So that's fluoride treatments at the dentist, fluoride in your toothpaste, fluoride in your mouthwash. Nowadays it's gone to, have you ever been at a kid's party I was at recently for my kid's birthday party? They served only little waters for the kids with fluoride added, which was like, okay, I thought that was a little bit much personally.
But I mean, most of that initial paper that was done to support water fluoridation was funded by the aluminum industry, basically, and the National Institute of Dental Research, but mostly Reynolds Metals and all these aluminum, Petroleum Institute, Alcoa, all these things. They did it. So it's interesting. And then when they were selling fluoride to the American public, they hired this guy, Edward Bernays, they call him the father of spin in marketing and stuff. He was the original guy who went during the women's suffrage movement, who has that famous photo where they're smoking cigarettes and called them torches of freedom.
Torches, yeah.
In like 1910 or 12 or something like that. That's him.
Thank you.
So this is like, but the scientists that have supported it and the institutes that have supported it have been the defenders of asbestos, have been the defenders of putting lead up to a safe amount in gasoline.
Yeah.
We've found that that's been a terrible thing and it was completely wrong. You know what I mean? So
I think the question is whether fluoride is something that it makes sense to try and find a safe amount of what everyone acknowledges is a poison, or is it something that you should avoid? And that's the question you have for yourself. One of the things to me is that it drives home, especially with kids. Like, if you're an adult, maybe you've been doing it forever, I don't know that unless you started thinking about these issues or having health problems, maybe this isn't going to interest you at all. But when I have kids and you start to think about what are you putting in their mouth, go look at a toothpaste that's designed for kids and read what it says. Not to be ingested at all. If even a small amount is ingested, then please contact a poison control center or go to the hospital. Now, to me, that strikes me as a little bit problematic, to be honest, because if you've ever tried to brush a 3-year-old's teeth, the idea of telling them not to swallow it, and the idea that something would be safe in their mouth, and then that they could, just through rinsing of water at a 3-year-old level, spit it all out and not have any of that ingested, is laughable.
And this is funny. The Journal of Public Health Dentistry. Many children ingest more fluoride from toothpaste alone than is recommended as a total daily fluoride intake. That's including water. And in the last 50 years, dental fluorosis in children has risen from 10% to 40%.
Yeah. That's pretty damning.
Significant,
Yeah.
And initially they said that fluoride was safe in 1 part per million, and then it was 2 parts, and then 4 parts, and so you find high levels of fluoride in the water in certain areas. It's now done, I think, according to region or state or water supply, But yeah, I mean, around in Chicago we have 2 parts per million. That's that's double what they initially said was safe back in the 1950. You know what I mean?
I think, to me, one of as you ask yourself these questions about whether it's safe or not, tooth decay is an issue. One of the things that is interesting is that tooth decay in general, just through good brushing and better awareness of dental hygiene, has risen on the same curve as far as less and less cavities and less dental problems across all developed countries in the world.
The last 50 years.
Over the last 50 years, the rate of tooth improvement has happened regardless of whether or not the country fluoridates their water, and regardless of whether they widely use fluoride in their toothpaste.
Yeah.
So major countries like in Northern Europe, there's some countries that do not do it and are against it.
No,
They've had no
Scandinavia
problems.
and stuff,
They don't. They're not. People always say, "Oh, look at England." Is like they're like, "Well, look at their teeth." I think it's not true. When you look across the world at various countries, there is not a correlation that, like, if we did this, I think that's the fear most parents have. Is like, what will happen to me or to my children if I don't do that? If I don't give them this. And the bottom line is, if you teach your children and you use good hygiene, and there are a lot of great antibacterial things now in toothpaste, like grapefruit seed extract,
Propolis.
tea tree, propolis. There's all
Propolis
kinds
is
of
in
great
so many.
xylitol, which
Yeah.
is really great, that are in these natural toothpastes that can be alternatives that don't have this toxicity issues. So to me, that's my...
That's why it works. We should talk about that. Like topically, that's why it works, is that all cells find at some level that fluoride is poisonous. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that you're taking a level that's poisonous to the bad bacteria, but not to yourself. But what did you say in our last episode? How many flora in your mouth?
25,000 different species of bacteria in your mouth alone.
In your mouth. So now think about that. What are those? Some of those are very fragile. You know, that's a fragile ecosystem.
Yeah.
So if you mess with that, you're killing bad bacteria, but then
Yeah.
you're killing good bacteria. And then you look at...
But the larger issue is that ingested it's a poison.
Yeah, but then I'm saying, what does that do? I mean, we didn't have incidences of candida like we do now in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, why is there such a huge onset now? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And digestive diseases.
Anyway.
It's like, you know, I'm just saying, like...
Yeah. The bottom line
I
is
wouldn't take the chance,
it's things to think about. Maybe we'll link up some different resources below, as well as we are, in honor of this episode, creating a fluoride-free section of oral care products on our website. So by the time you see this, you'll be able to click below and see fluoride-free products and alternatives if you so choose. So Jay, you wanted to bring up a few questions about, and we were talking about, I don't know if we've covered enough yet of the potential downsides of fluoride. So let's just talk about some of the things out there. Whether some of these are undecided. We're not saying that this is all definitely the case.
Maybe I can just tell a little of the history. In the 90s, there was a doctor that was hired by the Forsyth Dental Institute to study. She had been part of this this collective of scientists who had come up with this new way for brain imaging, neurotoxicity of chemicals on the brain. And they had these new computer systems where they could track how it was affecting the brain. And so she was told to research fluoride, and she was kind of like, everyone knows that's good, we use it in our toothpaste, everything, I don't want to do this. And they made her do it. And the results were not good. She came back, and this is not on children, this was in lab animals, but she found ADD and ADHD-like behavior. And the guy at the board of directors said, you do realize what you're telling us. And she's like...
Yeah, you can't. If you're a scientist, what are you going to... You can't change what you find.
And so she was fired and hasn't received a grant since, which is kind of crazy. And throughout the time when you look at people who have spoken out against it, that keeps happening again and again. So it's a little disturbing that the thought that
kind of like Big Brother-ish sort of
that it's like a blacklist-ish kind of thing. You know what I mean? What's gonna happen to us? No, I mean, and so that's not good. This National Research Council. I mean, that's a legitimate organization. It admits that it's an endocrine disruptor in higher levels, and
it's
it messes with the function of the thyroid gland. So these are problems that seem to be prevalent.
Yeah, but they're complex enough that it's not like you're going to say
it's not directly.
Yeah, it would be very easy if you use the toothpaste and then you got sores in your mouth. No one would use it. But you're talking about something that goes into complex processes of the body that are very difficult, like anything, to trace back to their origin. Yeah. And we're not saying that is the origin. I think our point is just, hey,
if
you're
that
confronted.
Plays any role,
and we know that heavy metals and all kinds of toxins in the environment, we're confronted with them every day, especially children. It's like they say a baby is born and they already find through in utero phthalates and PCBs and all these foreign toxins in their system already by the first day. It's like you're born already behind on the toxin front. So why expose yourself to more of them by putting them in your mouth and rubbing them around? That just seems like crazy, So to me, that's the issue. It's not about we're right and it's wrong. I'm not even interested in like, oh, is it a conspiracy or not? Who gives a darn, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
The issue is like just for yourself. Decide and make a choice that seems right to you based on what you see out there. And don't take our word for it. Go do research and then you decide, does it seem like a cut and dry case one way or the other? Or does it seem
seem like you could find a better antibacterial agent?
Yeah. Does it seem really confusing and maybe you could just find a way to do it that would avoid the question altogether? That's my personal choice.
Yeah.
All right?
I mean, I agree. So
cool.
But make your own decision. And
definitely, and be happy with it, and
question everything all the time. That's more important. What you're putting in and on your body, you should be questioning all the time. So that's just the more important, larger issue, I think.
Yeah, and that's why I want to do this. It's not about selling things. It's just let's get it out.
Let's get the questions out there so we can start forming some opinions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For yourself
and have someone who's not. Unfortunately, I conclusively my dentist about it, and he was just like, "Oh, you're one of those guys, huh?" There's been no conclusive no conclusive studies done, and it's like, I get it, and I don't think he's a really nice guy. I get it, but
they're not going to be at the forefront.
Yeah. Also, his job is to clean people's teeth and make sure my teeth are okay, not to do research himself and decide the fate of the human populace at large.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's beyond any dentist's scope, to be honest, unless you're one of those researchers. All right? Have fun. Cheers.